hearings on Hunter Biden and come up with not one impeachable offense in all that time. 15 months, over 10,000 documents and more, as you can see today as a result of that. This is a do-nothing Congress. And we should be doing the jobs that we were sent here to do, which is not to have investigation hearing after investigation hearing over and over and over again, and then run to our favorite TV outlet to give interviews afterwards. We were sent here to get a job done. Taxpayers are looking at all of us. Meanwhile, Americans, black, white, Asian, Latino, Native American, and their families are wondering what the hell is going on. Is this another investigation hearing in this 15 months that has yielded nothing at all? It's the do-nothing Congress. You thought Harry Truman said it in 1948. Anybody can say it today. Look at what we've done in 15 months. Virtually nothing. Nothing at all. Senior citizens sit in their homes and watch C-SPAN or some other outlet carry this. Some of them sitting in nursing homes, all of them worried about losing their Social Security. They're on fixed incomes, and they expect the Congress to use its time and its energy to deal with things that affect them directly. Students are defaulting on loans to colleges all over the country, and no one wants to talk about that. Health care is inadequate in most places in this country, and diseases are ravaging our communities, and people assume that at some point the Congress will deal with that. And so whether it's cancer, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, diabetes, HIV, stroke, the disparities in the health system say, please, please give us a little bit of your time also when you're not dealing with Hunter Biden and when you can't prove that he's done anything wrong. Crime is out of control, white collar as well as black collar. And assault weapons are still being used every day to shoot and kill innocent children and Americans. And we're sitting up here talking about something that we've talked about for 15 months with no substantial evidence. Can't get humanitarian aid to Palestine. Can't get military aid to the Ukraine. Children are looking and wondering what the hell is going on. Is that what politics are about? So we are doing a disservice. I know I'm supposed to be asking questions, and Mr. Parnas, I may have one or two for you, but I am so outraged at a do-nothing Congress, just pointing the finger over and over again, and people are hurting, looking for real help. Can't deal with immigration because Donald Trump calls up and kills the immigration bill, and yet people say that's a major issue, is it? I haven't seen the sort of attention that we thought we were putting to that or anything else. And so this particular hearing will probably be followed by another hearing and another hearing and another hearing until this Congress expires in January of next year. And we haven't done a damn thing to move the ball forward, except make accusations. Life is too short. Now, maybe some of you have a guarantee you're going to be around forever, but I don't. I came to this body first in 1987. I worked under Ronald Reagan and the first Bush and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and now Joe Biden. This Congress is not doing anything. It's not like the previous Congresses, trust me. That's why people have such a low esteem of those of us who say, well, I'm Congressman so-and-so. People on the street don't buy that. They don't see the action. So I'm done. I know I've exhausted my time. Mr. Parnas, a couple quick questions, and I'll let you go. Is it your understanding that Rudy Giuliani worked for an individual identified by the Trump administration as a Russian agent?
Yes.
Do you know what these Russian line actors were trying to do? Quickly.
Push a conspiracy theory about the Bidens.
Did you know that, did you warn Rudy Giuliani?
Yes, I did.
And what was his response, succinctly?
He told me that he agreed with me, but then proceeded to work with these people behind my back.
And these people have been identified as Russian agents?
Yes, sir.
And we've got a meeting here of Mr. Giuliani with one of those. I'm disgusted, as most people are, about this process. And the only way we get to a point where we get things done is that we learn to talk to one another across the aisle without having another conspiracy theory after another one after another one. You don't buy trust that way. You buy contempt. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Lisa McClain for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by saying I think most Americans are taught at a very young age that you are who you surround yourself with. I think keep that in a premise as I sat here and listened to everyone talk about how Hunter Biden is just this golden boy. I mean, are we really supposed to believe that Hunter Biden is the golden boy? His associates, such as Jason Galanis and Devin Archer, are felons convicted of fraud, yet he is the golden child. I want to talk about examples of Biden's influence peddling scheme. This time, it was Romania. It follows the same general pattern as we have seen with other countries like China, Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. Here's the pattern. It's really simple. A corrupt foreign oligarch needs access to the U.S. government. Hunter Biden sells influence to the U.S. government. The oligarchs pay up. So let's just take a deeper dive into this Romanian scheme. Mr. Bobulinski, who is Gabriel Popovich?
Gabriel Popovich is a businessman from Romania, probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars, I'd envision.
Okay. Is it true that Gabriel Popovich faced corruption charges in Romania in 2015?
It is.
Thank you. And when you were in Europe with the Bidens to close on that CEFC deal with the Chinese, you separately negotiated with Popovich to get a 17th payment. Is that also correct?
I did.
Okay. But Popovich did not want to pay him. Is that correct?
Correct. You're talking about a 17th payment that would go to Rob Walker, and then Rob Walker would distribute to Hunter Biden.
That is correct. And is it because Hunter Biden had failed in the work he was engaged by Popovich to do, which was to get the corruption charges dismissed by the Romanian authorities? Isn't that correct?
Well, it's two things, that they had failed to do that, but also that Joe Biden had left the White House at that point.
Okay, so there's a dot. So I get 16 payments while Joe Biden's in the White House.
Correct.
But after Joe Biden leaves the White House, coincidentally, the payments stop.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that we can connect the dots very simply.
But obviously wasn't a coincidence.
Right, I'm not much for coincidences, which neither are the American people. But, Mr. Bobulinski, what do you think Popovich wanted Hunter Biden to do?
I don't have to think, because Gabriel told me personally he expected, and didn't want the details, he expected Hunter Biden, Rob Walker, and James Gillier to do whatever was necessary to impact his case in Romania.
How do you know that?
Because Gabriel Popovich told me that.
From his mouth?
Yes.
Okay, so there's another dot that we can connect. Would that be a conspiracy theory?
That's not a conspiracy theory.
Okay, thank you.
I would encourage you to interview Gabriel Popovich.
Thank you. Lastly, after claiming he wanted a public hearing, Hunter Biden decided to skip today. Why do you think he skipped the hearing today?
Is that a rhetorical or serious? Well, I don't think he wanted to sit next to me, because obviously I've emphatically stated he perjured himself in his transcribed interview with the committee, as did his uncle, Jim Biden. And for every fact he claims or wants to say I was high on drugs or obfuscate, I can show a document, a text message, a recording that is confirmed that he's lying.
Well, let's not let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? Here are the facts.
Highly disappointing that he's not here, though.
I would agree. Here are the facts. Hunter Biden was engaged by a foreign principal, Gabriel Popovich. It is well known that Hunter Biden met with the ambassador to Romania, Hans Klem, in November of 2015. Hunter Biden was not registered under FARA. He stopped getting paid as soon as his father leaves office until you got Popovich to send Hunter Biden one more payment. Seriously, what services was Hunter Biden providing to the Romanian oligarchs for millions of dollars? We've yet to hear it. As far as the committee knows, Hunter Biden was never registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. If the Department of Justice applied the same standards it did in the Paul Manafort case, Hunter would be in more trouble than he is already in. Mr. Chairman, there are real FARA issues here that we need to continue to look at. And with that, I thank you for being here, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good job. Chair now recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bobulinski, I heard your opening statement. It's submitted to the record, part of our proceedings. I have a quick question. Simple. Is it your testimony today that you personally witnessed President Joe Biden commit a crime?
I believe the fact that he was sitting with me while I was putting together a business deal.
Did you witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime. Did you watch him steal something?
Corruption statutes, RICO and conspiracy.
What is it? What is the crime, sir? Specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category. What is the crime?
It's a category of crimes that you're then charged under.
You have charges.
A long 100
You
list
have
of
charges. Sir, please
want me to name the exact statute under RICO?
Yes.
Well, it's funny. In this committee room, everyone's not here. There's over 18
all right, sir, I reclaim my
lawyers
time.
that went to law school.
I reclaim my time.
You guys
okay,
to
thank
define
you,
the
sir. I
statute
reclaim my
under
time.
RICO.
Clearly, what we are seeing here today is a continuation of the 15-month saga of the Republican majority lost in the desert. Impeachment 101. The majority party, or whomever is raising impeachment, must accuse the president of a high crime, a specific high crime or misdemeanor. I would like to submit to the record HRES 918, the House resolution to open this impeachment inquiry.
Without objection to order.
This resolution does not outline a high crime or misdemeanor. It's not here. Now, when we compare the chairman's opening from his previous opening, he's talking about Ukraine and Burisma and all of this. This entire inquiry is based on a blockbuster piece of information that was in a classified SCIF room. And inside that room was a document alleging President Biden directly of a $10 million bribery scheme, a $10 million bribery scheme, extremely serious. What happened? What happened a month ago, Mr. Chairman? That document, the FBI arrested the person who offered those allegations for falsifying his testimony to the FBI. This entire impeachment inquiry is based on an actual, provable individual who has lied. Now, responsible leadership would withdraw an inquiry based on that. Withdraw it. Instead, what we are seeing is that this committee was warned about the falsehoods of these allegations long before that, warned by Trump's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and yet they proceeded anyway. The chairman proceeded anyway. This committee was warned by Rudy Giuliani associate right here, Lev Parnas, after that document about the falsehoods of this. Then held hearings where your own expert witnesses said that there was no grounds for impeachment, and you proceeded anyway. And finally, as if none of this was enough, the FBI arrested the individual who was the source of the entire, to quote the chairman, heart of the matter, to launch this impeachment inquiry, and proceeded anyway. At this point, the story is not the fact that the basis of this impeachment inquiry is wrong. The story is why it's proceeding anyway. Why is this committee proceeding based on false charges? And by the way, no charges. I have yet to hear in the chairman's opening the allegation that they are specifically charging the President of the United States with. I'm hearing about Biden family. I'm hearing about this and that. I am not hearing the specific allegation by this committee. What is it? It's not here, and that is the problem. The story is when this committee knew that they were working with falsified evidence. That's the story. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On March 1st, 2024, Joe Biden stated he did not interact with Hunter or Jim Biden business associates. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into a record New York Post article. Biden insists he did not interact with his
Without objection to order.
We're going to go fast here. I have strictly yes or no questions. On that note, the New York Post article, Joe Biden also said, read the record of every single witness. So I did. I first read Devin Archer's deposition, and he interacted with Joe Biden. Then I read the transcripts of Wab Walker, Eric Schwerin, George Burgess, Kevin Morris, Tony Bobulinski, and Jason Galanis. And every single one of them interacted with Joe Biden. And that's just the people we interviewed. Mr. Galanis, my first questions are for you. Did Hunter Biden call Joe Biden with Elaine Badarina on the line on May 4th, 2014, yes or no?
Yes.
In that call, did Hunter Biden state on this call with Joe Biden that everything is good and we're moving forward?
Yes, he did.
Okay, on the same call, did Joe Biden in the call was saying, okay, then you be good to my boy?
Yes, he said that as well.
Okay, did Badarina agree to put $20 million into one of Hunter Biden's business projects days later after this phone call?
Yes.
Okay, did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
Yes, he did.
During this call, did Hunter Biden update Joe Biden on progress in landing a business partnership with Harvest Fund Management?
Yes.
Okay. Was Harvest a $300 billion Chinese financial services company closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Is Hunter Biden involved with Harvest?
Hunter Biden is involved in Harvest in two ways, through BHR, which is a fund.
Yes or no? Was Hunter
Biden
Biden involved with Harvest? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the deal,
extensive emails to that effect.
As part of the deal, did Hunter Biden want the company to reserve a board seat for Joe Biden?
Yes.
Okay. Did Henry Zhao, a Chinese businessman, want assurances Joe Biden would join the board? Yes or no?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Did
He's
Hunter
expressed
Biden?
that in emails as well.
Okay, thank you.
And
Did Hunter Biden draft an email stating, please also remind Henry Zhao of our conversation about a board seat for a certain relation of mine. Devin and I golfed with that relation earlier this week, and we discussed this very idea again. And as always, he remains very, very keen on the opportunity. Here is a photo of Joe Biden and Devin Archer and Hunter Biden golfing days before the alleged email draft. Do you believe a certain relation of mine refers to Joe Biden?
I don't think there's any question. It was based on first-hand conversations with Devin Archer, who was in that picture and at that golf meeting.
Did you ever meet with Devin Archer where Hunter took calls from his father?
Yes.
Okay. During one of these phone calls, did Hunter Biden tell Joe Biden that he and Henry Zhao needed help getting, quote, getting across the finish line?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Bobulinski, do you recall receiving an email that floated the possibility of giving 10% ownership of Sinohawk to Joe Biden through Hunter Biden?
Yes.
Okay. My last questions are for both of you very quickly. Mr. Bobulinski and Mr. Galanis, you both stated you were told not to use Joe Biden's name in communications, correct, Mr. Bobulinski?
Correct.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
Okay. Did Joe Biden participate in phone conversations and meetings with Hunter Biden, his business associates, and foreign interests? Yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
He clearly did.
Okay, Mr. Galanis, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. In Hunter Biden's deposition, he said he did not involve his father in his business. Did Hunter Biden lie under oath? Yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
If that's what he said, yes, that would be true.
Is Joe Biden lying when he says he did not interact with Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, their business partners, or forward interests? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
All right. In a debate on October 22nd, 2020, Joe Biden denied Hunter Biden made money from China. Then Hunter Biden, his business associates, and foreign interests include money from Chinese businesses, business partners, and or interests. Yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
I'm sorry. Did the
Hunter
Biden family
Biden
make
receive money from Chinese
Correct.
business interests? Yes. Mr. Galanis? that Hunter Biden received money from Chinese business interests? Yes or no?
Yes, he was.
Okay, thank
yes,
you.
he had economic interests, and yes.
All right. Joe Biden has
regardless.
repeatedly claimed that he was not involved in Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, or any other Biden family business deals. Today, our witnesses have proved otherwise. Today, we've established Joe Biden lied about interacting with Hunter Biden's business associates. It is my belief Joe Biden is the closer for Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and their business associates and foreign interests. Good luck to the left proving otherwise. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Porter from California.
The title of this hearing is Influence Peddling, Examining Joe Biden's Abuse of Public Office. Look, the impeachment inquiry is dead. If it was on life support, my colleague Ocasio-Cortez just killed it. There is no allegation of a specific crime. President Biden didn't do anything wrong. There's zero evidence of that. And still, both Democrats and Republicans and the media treat these hearings like the Super Bowl. But no one ever wins, and Americans always lose. So I've got a fresh direction for this hearing. All we have to do is cross off the part after the colon. There, just influence peddling. We should have a policy discussion about how to stop government officials from using their positions to get money or favors. Now, that is a real hearing, one that nearly every American, regardless of party, wants us to hold. We could start by talking about how senior executive branch officials can leave public service, wait just 1 year, and then legally become lobbyists for big corporations, scoring their new employers profitable government contracts and favorable regulations. They can even be paid by the big corporations during that short 1 year while they are waiting to become lobbyists as a down payment for their future ability to peddle influence. That's wrong. For the panel of witnesses, by show of hands, as Americans, would our witnesses support extending this 1 year waiting period to at least 2 years?
No, I would.
Okay, so there we go. Republicans, Democrats, even convicted criminals, everybody supports that we should do more to stop influence peddling. This is the kind of good government reform that Americans of all political stripes support. And I should know, in 2022, I passed that exact reform as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act with a bipartisan majority vote. What happened to that amendment? Why didn't it become law? The answer is simple. Nearly 500 former members of Congress work for lobbying firms. And too many people around here want to follow in their footsteps, and so don't want to make it harder for government officials to become lobbyists. Ultimately, Democratic leadership under then Speaker Nancy Pelosi let the amendment get stripped out of the final bill. When I offered up the amendment again during this Congress, Republican leadership under then Speaker Kevin McCarthy never even put the amendment up for a vote. Both parties have let us down on fighting influence peddling and tackling corruption. But I'm hopeful we can begin a new approach in this very committee. The American people should know that regardless of party, should know that an investigation was conducted into whether Joe Biden did anything wrong. We followed the evidence to where it led a dead end. So this impeachment inquiry should end today. And where should we go from here? We should stop partisan attacks on each other and address the real problem, that the American people believe that the rules that prevent corruption are way too weak. To stop politicians on both sides of the aisle from influence peddling. This committee should be working together in a bipartisan way to change the culture of Congress, to crack down on influence peddling and corruption, and just as importantly, to stop the perception of it. Let me give you some facts. I don't even need a whiteboard for this one. 495 former members of Congress work for lobbying firms. 467 members of Congress take corporate PAC money. 78 members of Congress violated the Stock Act last Congress. Clearly, we have our work cut out for us. So let's start the conversation today on what a bipartisan ethics reform package could look like. Here are the organizations that could have come today as witnesses so we could have had a productive conversation. Oversight staff, do you have your notebooks ready? Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, Common Cause, Project on Government Oversight, Public Citizen. With the right witnesses and the commitment to doing what the American people want, this committee can have a real conversation about the problem of influence peddling, and we can pass legislation to create badly needed ethics guardrails. That would be real work, not a real circus. I yield back.
Before I recognize Mr. Timmons, Ms. Porter, I think you are sincere, and I look forward to working with you on that legislation.
Chairman, can we take a 5-minute break? I need to go to the bathroom.
Let us get one more, and then we'll do that. Chair recognizes Mr. Timmons for 5 minutes, then we'll take a break because we have votes coming up anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our hearing last July, I laid out the scheme that the Bidens concocted to sell the Biden brand, netting almost $30 million for various members of the Biden family. This scheme was repeated with various clients in Kazakhstan, China, Romania, Russia, and Ukraine. I'm going to spend my time on just one instance, Ukraine, specifically involving Burisma, which netted Hunter over $3 million during a 3-year period. And to clarify the criminal offenses being alleged, for Hunter Biden, it is conspiracy to commit bribery, 18 U.S.C. Section 201 B, 2A, and C. And for Joe Biden, it's conspiracy to commit extortion under color of official right, 18 U.S.C. Section 1951 B2. And if you want a refresher on those, just look up Senator Menendez and his wife's indictment. So let's start with this. Foreign client has a problem. I've got an email here from Vadim Pozharsky, the Secretary of Burisma. And he is advocating that Hunter Biden intervene with high-level U.S. officials to facilitate meetings and communications expressing their positive opinion of Zlochevsky, the president of Burisma, to the Ukrainian president, chief of staff, prosecutor general, with the ultimate purpose to close down any cases against Zlochevsky in Ukraine. This is dated November 2nd. Now, keep in mind, and again, foreign client has a problem. Zlochevsky is being investigated by Viktor Shokin, the Inspector General of Ukraine, and he needs help, the Biden brand. So here we got bank records galore of Hunter Biden receiving, prior to this email, over $1 million. After this email, $2 million. You'll find out in a second he really earned his fee. So again, client pays a Biden, $3 million. Next, what happens? What happens? This is great. 11 days later, we have the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine announcing that Vice President Biden is traveling to Ukraine on December 7th. Oh, interesting. Vice President Biden travels to the country. Here we got a great photo of him touching down. They're very proud of themselves. So Vice President Biden leverages U.S. policy to achieve a favorable outcome for the client. We've all seen the video. He brags about leveraging U.S. foreign loan guarantees to get the Ukrainian government to fire Viktor Shokin to end the investigation. Again, we've got the email from Pozharsky saying that we need to leverage you, who have not provided value yet for your $1 million in service, Hunter. He brings in the big guy. Biden leverages U.S. influence, withholds $1 billion in loan guarantee to fire Shokin. So if that's not enough, we got the victory lap here. We got an email just a few months later saying, whoa, we won in less than a year. You brought us in, so take a victory lap. So look, I mean, this is straightforward. Pay to play. It is bribery. Hunter Biden was paid $3 million at the lowest point in his life. He testified in the deposition that he was drug addicted, that he's never been to Ukraine. Yet he's paid $3 million to get his father to go to solve his client's problem. That is the scheme. Mr. Bobulinski, does this sound like the scheme that you've seen the Biden family do?
I wasn't involved in Ukraine, but the facts surrounding this are very similar to CFC and Romania.
Thank you for that. So this is the thing. If Hunter Biden were here, we would be able to ask him some questions, maybe clear this up. But he's not. He's not here. And what's interesting is that just yesterday, Peter Navarro reported to federal prison in Miami for 4 months for not showing up in front of the January 6th committee. And I want to point out to everybody that the January 6th committee was procedurally defective under House rules. It was procedurally defective because the minority leader did not get to appoint members to that committee. The United States House of Representatives Oversight and Accountability Committee is a procedurally perfect committee. And we have authority to subpoena Hunter Biden, and he has to show up. He has to answer these questions, and he has to tell the world that his father didn't leverage U.S. foreign policy so he would get $3 million. This is no different than what Senator Menendez did. And look, the American people are not buying this nonsense y'all are selling. We must restore their faith in our institutions. And we have to stop this ridiculous two-tiered system of justice where the Department of Justice persecutes President Trump and hides Hunter Biden behind every corner. I mean, this is not the United States of America that the American people deserve, and we have to get our country back on track. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry. Did the committee subpoena Hunter Biden today?
Chair recognizes, pursuant to the previous order and at the request of the minority witness, the chair declares the committee in recess for 10 minutes. Then we're going to come back in here, and then we may have to recess again for votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing is another unfortunate attempt by my Republican colleagues to muddy the water in an election year with no proof, no evidence, no wrongdoing at all by President Biden. The American people are tired of this charade. As I said before, my Republican colleagues simply grasp at straws that do not exist. While House Democrats in the Biden-Harris administration work to cut costs of prescription drugs, expand student loan forgiveness, and mitigate the threat of gun violence, Republican members of Congress continue to chase after Russian disinformation campaigns from the 2020 election, which have been thoroughly debunked again and again. And as usual, in this committee, we know who is in charge. It is the bondless, broke bluffer, twice impeached, 4 times indicted, insurrection initiator, election denying, self-declared dictator on day one, and puppet for Putin. The one who wants to terminate the Constitution and defund the FBI. The one who romanticized exchanging of love letters with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. The one who just last week embraced autocrat Orbán of Hungary to discuss their diabolical plans to destroy our democracy. The one who proposed a policy to ban Muslims from this country. The one who just this week said any Jewish person who votes for a Democrat hates their religion and Israel. The one who called neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches chanting Jews will not replace us, good people. The one who referred to African nations as, I quote, shithole countries. The one who called NFL players, the majority whom are black, sons of bitches for taking a knee in protest of the ever-present racial inequality and police brutality that continues to pervade our justice system. The one who called Mexicans rapists and promised to build a wall and have them pay for it, and in case you missed it, it didn't happen. The one who told women of color from born in the United States, elected to Congress and serving on this very committee, to go back to their own countries. The one who bragged about grabbing women by their private parts. The one who confused his rape victim, whom he claimed was not his type, for his very own ex-wife. The one who is an admitted and committed adulterer who attempted to pay off a porn star for her silence. The one who has publicly mocked people with disabilities. The one who dodged the draft and referred to prisoners of war as losers, the very people who pay a high price so we could enjoy the freedoms that far too many of us take for granted. The one who boasted about being able to stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue to shoot someone and not lose votes. The one who promoted political and physical violence multiple times, including most recently at my rally in my home state of Ohio, where he declared there would be a blood bloodbath if he didn't win. The one who intentionally denied COVID was deadly and eventually suggested testing injecting bleach into our bodies to kill the respiratory virus that took the lives of 1 million people in the United States. The one who ordered his son-in-law get top secret security clearance, overruling concerns flagged by intelligence officials, who, according to this committee's chairman, admitted the former president's son-in-law crossed the line of ethics by accepting a $2 billion investment into that very same son-in-law's fledgling firm only 6 months after leaving the White House. If any of this sounds crazy, it's because it is. This might sound unbelievable, but it's all true. These are facts, indisputable facts, a thing that is known and proven to be true. This may be a foreign concept to some of my colleagues, but for those of us who still have a relationship with the truth, please know this is not an exhaustive list of inappropriate, unethical, and questionable behavior by the maniacal manipulator of Mar-a-Lago, because I could go on, but I only have 5 minutes. Yet here we are again, trying to make sense out of nonsense. I would humbly, respectfully ask my Republican colleagues on this committee to stop falling over yourselves to win the approval of one, because millions of people are depending on you to defend our delicate democracy. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to
Chair now.
The ranking member.
7 seconds.
Oh, I don't know that there's much time left, but thank you for that eloquent and compressed recitation of some of what we've lived with over the last few years.
Chair recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas for 5 minutes.
Mr. Bobulinski, I want to talk about May of 2017. To be clear, Hunter Biden was doing business with CEFC while his dad was VP. Are you aware of that now? Yes. Rob Walker told us that during his transcribed interview before the committee. But I want to talk to you about your meeting with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and Jim Biden in May of 2017. Other members are going to bring up the meeting you had with Joe Biden at the Beverly Hilton the night before the Milken Conference, but I want to talk about the next day when you went as Joe Biden's guest to the Milken Conference. So, you watched Joe Biden deliver a speech that day. Then you had a follow-up conversation with Joe Biden. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
What did Joe Biden tell you during that conversation?
Well, as I've already publicly shared, I was brought backstage by his team because he had just given his keynote, and we just exchanged pleasantries, and then I walked him out to his car, and he specifically thanked me for the work I was doing with his son and his brother and asked me to keep an eye on them.
And my understanding is, Mr. Bobulinski, that after Joe Biden had left, you went across the street to the Peninsula Hotel and had a long conversation with his brother, Jim Biden. Isn't that correct?
I did.
It's my understanding that you asked him how the Biden family does the business that they do, while Joe Biden is such a prominent political figure. What was Jim Biden's response to you?
Correct. I was actually concerned and asking from a position of concern, and Jim Biden's response to me was plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. And by that you mean Joe Biden would be kept in the loop, but you weren't supposed to talk about it, especially in writing. Mr. Galanis, during your transcribed interview with the committees, you said a very interesting phrase. Say it, forget it, write it, regret it. Does this sound familiar? Is this consistent with your understanding of how the Bidens do business, Mr. Galanis?
Yeah, very, very much so. That was an operating principle, yes.
But it looks like someone made a mistake. Mr. Bobulinski, you created 2 companies with the Bidens. I want to show you an infamous email discussing the ownership structure of one of those companies, CEFC. You can see on the screen, 20% for H, 20% for Rob Walker, 20% for James Gilliar, 20% for Tony Bobulinski, 10% for Jim Biden, and 10% held by H for the, quote, big guy. Mr. Bobulinski, who is the big guy?
The big guy is 100% Joe Biden.
Mr. Bobulinski, Hunter Biden didn't respond saying, knock it off. We can't include Joe Biden, did he?
No, and that's actually a critical point because remember—
Mr. Bobulinski, did you ever get a text message or a group text message or anything like that saying, guys, knock it off, Joe Biden isn't involved in this deal?
No, the whistleblowers actually have a text exchange where they're talking about everything else but that, and the reason why they weren't talking about it is because everyone knew Joe Biden was the big guy.
Hunter Biden begged for a public hearing, but it turns out he is too afraid of accountability to show up and tell the truth to the American people. But Americans don't need Hunter's testimony to know they are being gaslit by this president. It's blatantly obvious to anyone paying attention that Joe Biden is the big guy. The CEFC deal broke the say it, forget it, write it, regret it rule of the Biden family businesses, and now they are trying to cover it up. Joe Biden said repeatedly that his family never made a dime from China. But Mr. Bobulinski just confirmed that Hunter, Jim, and the big guy himself all got a cut from the CEFC China energy deal. Let me be clear. The only service the Biden family ever provided was their ability to leverage the office of the Vice President of the United States to cash in overseas. My Democrat colleagues are going to try and tell you that Joe Biden wasn't on the final ownership structure agreement, but isn't it true? If someone was holding Joe Biden's stake in the company, it wouldn't appear in the document. Isn't that the whole point of this email, to hold Joe Biden's stake so his name wouldn't be in the document? Isn't this just plausible deniability in action, Mr. Bobulinski?
It appears that way.
But plausible deniability only gets you so far. Now, I want to fast forward from May to the end of July of 2017 when the Bidens cut you out of the deal. I want to show you a message that Hunter sent to his Chinese business partners. Please put it up on the screen. Hunter writes, quote, "I am sitting here with my father and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled." So, when Hunter Biden is desperate for money, Jim Biden's old trick of plausible deniability doesn't cut it. And when desperate times call for desperate measures, Hunter Biden let the cat out of the bag, said the quiet part out loud, and gave the game away by calling on his father to help him shake down his Chinese business partners for the money. And it worked. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, just point of inquiry. What was the last image we saw that you put up? Where did that come from? I just want to authenticate that.
This is the Ways and Means Committee Exhibit 300.
Must be the Irish whistleblower note. All right. Not an inquiry, though. Anyway, Chair recognizes Ms. Stansbury for the last question.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the GOP's day-long campaign for Donald Trump. I want to start with Mr. Galanis to help connect some dots that have not yet been connected in this hearing. Mr. Galanis, you are serving just under 16 years for, among other things, as was been said today, defrauding a tribal nation and specifically a tribal corporation held by the Ogallala Sioux, which is why you are testifying from a prison today. But I'd like to ask you, Mr. Galanis, have you had an attorney representing you before this committee that you retained last December? And that attorney's name is Mr. Mark Paoletta, correct?
That's correct.
And when you first testified before this committee in a taped interview, you were actually stopped by Mr. Paoletta from answering just a simple question about how you met him and who exactly was paying your legal fees. Now, I want to make sure that the American people understand exactly who Mr. Paoletta is, because he is, in fact, a former lawyer to Donald Trump, who served in the administration in the Office of Management and Budget, and was at the center of the Ukrainian pressure campaign for which Donald Trump was impeached. And in fact, Mr. Paoletta was Trump's chief OMB lawyer when he withheld aid to Ukraine to try to extort the Ukrainian government into investigating Joe Biden to support Donald Trump's campaign. And Mr. Paoletta literally wrote the memo to help withhold those funds. Now, I want to dig in a little bit on this pressure campaign, and Mr. Lev Parnas is here to discuss as an eyewitness who was there. Mr. Parnas, we appreciate you being here, and I want to move through this quickly, so just ask for simple yes and no answers. You've testified here today that Donald Trump repeatedly asked you, and through Rudy Giuliani, to put pressure on the Ukrainian government to dig up dirt on Joe Biden to support Trump's campaign, correct?
100% yes.
And as we can see here in this picture, you were very much a business associate of Rudy Giuliani during this time. And as established in your testimony, you traveled to and met with Ukrainian officials and told them that the White House would withhold its support and aid to Ukraine if it did not cooperate with this bribery, essentially.
That's correct.
And as we all know, Donald Trump's administration, and specifically the Office of Management and Budget, did withhold that foreign aid in 2019. And here's the guy who did it. And he's representing the witness who's literally on Zoom with us for this committee today. And it's the reason why Donald Trump was impeached the first time. And the man at the center of that scheme is involved in the House GOP's inquiry. But I also want to point out that Mr. Paoletta is also involved in and very much in bed with the Thomases. In fact, he represented Miss Ginny Thomas, Clarence Thomas's wife, in her involvement in the Stop the Steal before the January 6th committee, and actually also goes on vacation with Mr. Harlan Crow and the Thomases. So this man has quite an interesting roster and participation in this hearing. But the bigger picture here is that Mr. Paoletta's presence is yet another indication of the way in which this hearing and this impeachment inquiry is part of Donald Trump's larger misinformation campaign, just like it was in 2020, where in addition to pressuring and withholding aid to Ukraine, Rudy Giuliani and the Trump Organization, as Mr. Parnas has established, planted the story in the media. And now here we are 4 years later as they've dredged it back up and are planting it back in the media using Congress, using this committee, and using a baseless impeachment supported by Donald Trump's own allies on this committee to push that information out. As members on this committee have trafficked in false evidence that was planted by a Russian operative to the FBI and is now in jail for that. All of this is in the service of propping up the criminal enterprise for which Donald Trump is at the top and has already been twice impeached. Rudy Giuliani and others have been exposed as they continue to traffic in Russian disinformation that not only props up Donald Trump, but it props up Vladimir Putin himself and his goals back in Russia and in Ukraine. So I just want to point out here that once again, as I said when we had a false impeachment hearing a few months ago, that once again we see the
time's expired, gentlelady's time's expired,
little hands of Donald Trump all over this hearing.
And just want to state, you made a mistake and said that Mr. Parnas was a Republican witness. He is very much your witness, not a Republican witness.
But I was a Republican for Donald Trump.
Mr. Chairman, I did not believe I said that, so we can...
Pursuant to the previous order, the chair declares the committee in recess due to votes. Subject to the call of the chair, we will reconvene 10 minutes after the 3 votes. All right, committee will reconvene. Chair now recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, I'm going to turn my questions to you. I hope I can see you on the screen here shortly. Are you there, Mr. Galanis? There you are. Okay. If we can jump right into another Biden-Chinese deal made while Joe Biden was in office, a deal I think you described in your interview as a quid pro quo, where the Chinese sent millions in exchange for a post-VP job for President Biden. Can you tell us what was Burnham?
Yeah, so Burnham was an 85-year-old financial services company based in New York that owned an asset management firm and a securities dealer. But relative to the Chinese, it was an unimportant, small player. I'll give you a scale, $1.5 billion versus $300 billion Chinese company.
So what was Hunter Biden's interest in working with them, knowing that that was the situation?
I think Hunter Biden was already working with them through the fund that was created. The BHR, Harvest was the H, and is described in some of Hunter's emails that I have provided to the committee. He described the activity with BHR, meaning the Harvest activity, as one of his only focuses, and his other focus would be the activity between Harvest directly and Burnham directly in a combination. So his stated objective, in his own words, in writing, was those were to be his only focus, his only priority in working with the Chinese on a go-forward basis.
Did you also say that he said the interest in working with Burnham was to make billions instead of millions? Is that right?
Yeah, I did say that, and that was on the basis of looking to become a much larger company where his equity interest would be worth a lot of money, billions, not millions.
And you said the Harvest Fund was a $300 billion Chinese financial services company. Was it likely connected, or was it connected closely to the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And who was Henry Zhao?
He's been described to me consistently by Devin and Hunter as the chairman, but he's essentially the head of Harvest. I think he's had a couple of different roles over the years, but chairman is the best way to, he was always characterized as chairman and the decision maker for that entity.
Right, so he's the chairman of the $300 billion Chinese entity connected to the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, and he was based out of where? Where was his base of operations?
In Beijing, China, PRC.
And like you said, you heard him referred to occasionally as Chairman Zhao, right?
Most of the time it was Chairman Zhao out of a sort of a respect for the chairman, yes.
Okay, so now there came to a point where Hunter wanted to bring Henry Zhao, the chairman of Harvest, and their billions of dollars from China into business with Burnham. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct, Congressman.
And why would he do that?
It was a financial decision. Chinese offered money, and he offered political access.
Okay.
It was in exchange.
Fair enough. It's pretty obvious what Harvest brings, right? $300 billion. But why would Harvest be interested in Burnham versus other financial institutions? I'm sure there are other ones out there, and like you said, it was fairly small. Harvest is $300 billion. Why would they care about this small Burnham? What was the interest for them?
I mean, the self-evident answer is the political access, and then sort of underscoring that is there are at least 2 emails produced that talk about exactly that, the influence or what Henry Zhao Hunter had characterized as Henry Zhao's interest in the access vehicle. So that was sort of explicit and in writing.
Okay, so Joe Biden was going to sit on the board of a Chinese company connected to the highest levels of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. Stepping back in your dealings with Hunter, what was the value that Hunter brought to the table?
It was the access to the inducement to induce companies like this Harvest group to participate in Burnham. So it was we'll call it relationship capital that he brought to the table, not financial capital.
Relationship capital,
economic value to the business.
Relationship capital that you described as the Biden lift. What was the Biden lift?
Biden lift was simply Hunter's access to his father and his father's power and prestige in influencing the growth of a financial services business, which is largely reliant on its reputation and ability to attract other clients.
I'm running out of time here, but it sounds like a quid pro quo to me. Sir, what did Harvest did in fact invest money in Burnham? You called it a material inducement. Can you explain what that means? And do you know how much the Chinese paid?
I believe I was out of the picture toward the end of 2015. I believe that they ended up paying $4 million into Burnham. I believe, though, as a result of the legal entanglements that I encountered, that the transactions didn't happen in the way people expected or that they had written about in terms of what the Chinese were expected to do.
All right, Mr. Galanis, I just want one last question. I'm going to show you a draft email that you provided to the committee. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Objection on time. Good job. Chair now recognize Ms. Crockett for 1 minute, or 5 minutes.
1 minute. All right. First of all, Mr. Bobulinski, do you know who Elections LLC is? Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's not a who.
Okay. Well, do you know what it is?
Yes, it's a LLC.
Okay. And is it the LLC that your attorney works for?
I believe so, yes.
You believe so. Okay. So at this point in time, I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a document indicating that the law firm representing Tony Bobulinski was paid $10,000 as recently as January of this year by the Save America PAC, which you may recognize as Donald Trump's PAC.
Without objection.
Thank you. Now, so far in this hearing, it has felt like the worst episode of The Apprentice. I'm sure you're familiar with that show. It seems like my colleagues and maybe you and some others are trying to become the next vice president of the United States of America. You're auditioning or something like that because, Mr. Bobulinski, I know that you take exception to the fact that your credibility has been called into question over and over. But when someone comes to testify under oath, whether it's before this committee, behind closed doors, or in person, then we have to evaluate someone's credibility. And, sir, I definitely have always had issues with your credibility, as I know that you are very well aware of. So let me remind you of what happened behind closed doors.
Well, you should ask O'Connor about my credibility.
I haven't asked you a question. Okay?
You are?
When I haven't. So when I ask you a question, that's when you answer. Otherwise, I'm talking. So,
excuse me?
With my time, because it's my time, I want to be clear that when we were behind closed doors, you called a number of people liars. You called the Wall Street Journal liars. You called Cassidy Hutchinson a liar. You called the FBI a liar. You called Rob Walker a liar. You called James Gilliar a liar. You called Hunter Biden a liar. You called Jim Biden a liar. And just today, you added to your list, you called my colleague, Congressman Mr. Goldman, a liar as well. It seems like, according to you, the only person that's telling the truth is you and everyone else is lying. But I want to move on to something else.
Is that a question?
It's not a question.
Oh, okay.
You'll know when I ask you a question, I promise.
Thank you.
So the other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that my colleague from the other side of the aisle talked about the company that we keep. And she wanted to go through a list of people that she felt like were bad company because right now the majority has been relying upon the testimony of someone who's currently sitting in federal prison. And we know that your company is the company of somebody who's been found liable of fraud, as well as defamation, as well as sexual assault, and for whatever reason can't pay his bills at this point in time. But I'm going to ask Mr. Parnas, so this is a question to him. Are you aware if Trump had any associates that have been found guilty of anything?
Yes, lots of them.
Lots of them.
Me included.
You included. Okay, so when you were called here to testify, you weren't called here to testify for any other reason than to tell the truth. Is that correct?
Yes, Congresswoman.
Now, we started this whole sham off because of the 1023. And that was debunked by you, was it not?
Yes, Congresswoman.
Way before we started this impeachment inquiry. And you mentioned a number of times this guy by the name of Rudy Giuliani.
Yes.
Now, you know, everybody is so stressed about the fact that Hunter ain't here today. But, you know, Hunter came and testified behind closed doors for over 6 hours. And every single one of them, they weren't limited to 5 minutes. They could ask whatever they wanted to. And there's a full transcript of his testimony. So I don't know what else they wanted to do besides the fact that they wanted to put on a show. But let me tell you something. This whole thing is based upon something that Giuliani came up with.
Yes.
And we tried to subpoena him, if I'm
That's what I remember. If anybody else remember, we asked, we said, hey, we should subpoena Giuliani. But you know, kind of like when we were trying to get his cell phone, they shut it down, right? Like they don't want the facts. But you would agree with me that considering the fact that you were working under Rudy Giuliani at the time that you went over to Ukraine, that he has maybe some valuable information that he could offer this committee as to whether or not there's anything that we should be investigating in the first place.
Absolutely, Congresswoman. I wish that this committee would subpoena Rudy Giuliani, put him under oath alongside me to get to the bottom of the truth of what actually happened in Ukraine and to the manipulation that Trump and Giuliani and the team went to do.
I agree with you, but somehow it doesn't look like we're going to get there, and I thank you for your time. With that, I'll yield.
Time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, on May 9th, 2014, you received an email from Devin Archer confirming, or you wrote an email confirming that Ms. Baturina was investing with Burnham Investments, $15 to $20 million. Is that true?
Yes, Congressman.
And let's talk about the predicate for that. Ms. Baturina is the richest woman in Russia, and you knew her. And were you invited to a party that she attended?
Yes, in Brooklyn, yes.
Let's have the invitation up, please. And here's a copy of the invitation that you received. Is that right?
Don't yet see it, Congressman. I did receive an email invitation, so
yeah,
yes.
An email invitation. And did you go to that party?
Yes, I did attend that party, yes.
And was Hunter Biden at that party?
Yes, he was.
And we know that he was because we have a confirmation of his calendar, which is the next exhibit. It was noted on there, and he showed up there. And so all of that's true. It's all verified right there. And Yelena Baturina and her then husband Yuri, they were at the party, right?
Correct.
With Devin Archer as well?
That's correct.
And during that party, you guys, Hunter pulled you guys, the people we just named, pulled them away from where the party is, and you go to a separate little area where it's quieter because there were over 100 people at that party. Is that true?
That's true, yes.
And all of a sudden, Hunter says, okay, I'm going to make a phone call. He makes a phone call, does he not?
He does.
To whom?
He called his father.
Then Vice President Joe Biden, who was Vice President at the time. What was said on the call, please? Wait a second. Before you tell us, the reason you know it is because he put it on speakerphone, right?
He did. After he said hello, and then he put it on speakerphone. So I was first party to hearing it. And initially,
please sum it up.
I'm sorry, Congressman, I talked over you.
Yeah, please sum up that phone call for us, Mr. Galanis.
Okay, it was a relatively short call, but it was he indicated that our friends had come in from out of town. That then the exchanges it testified was related to they were going to proceed. Things were going to proceed. And he said, the vice president had said, "You look after my boy."
And it was 5 days after that party that you received word from Devin that Ms. Baturina was in for $15 to $20 million with you guys, right?
That's correct.
Let's go to a different issue. Let's go to the harvest issue. And I'll just refresh everyone's recollection. When Devin Archer was there, because at that time he had to come in. He came on in, and we had this great conversation. And I said, hey, did Hunter ever indicate to you that the Chinese anticipated that after his father was out of office, he might join their company with one of their companies as a paid advisor? Mr. Archer says, did he intimate that? I said, did he indicate that to you? Mr. Archer, I don't recall, but potentially. I don't recall, but potentially. And I said, you don't recall, but it's not new to you. The concept is not new to you. Is that what you're saying? He said, no, it's not new to me. Why wasn't it new to him? Why wasn't it new to him? It wasn't new.
It's because that was...
Yeah, go ahead.
It was an explicit discussion amongst us that was an inducement to the Chinese to invest in the Burnham business. That being the VP's position post his position, official position.
On a board of advisors, paid board of advisors?
Of the Chinese company, Harvest, yes.
And when you say us, who was the us that was discussing that?
What I was referring to in just making that comment was Hunter, Devin, and myself.
Let's go to something else.
There was a broader sort of circulation group about that, and that was reflected in an email from a staff member at Thornton Group who circulated the draft email that also reflected he had a similar conversation and drafted a letter based on that understanding.
How long have you been incarcerated, Mr. Galanis?
I've been incarcerated for 8 years, Congressman.
And you offered to tell the Southern District of New York and SEC about Hunter Biden's company, Rosemont Seneca Bohai, and they rejected your offer, didn't they?
On multiple occasions, that's correct.
And why do you think they rejected that offer?
Chairman, I think he's over.
Time's expired, but please answer the question. Answer the question, Mr. Galanis.
All I can tell you is what counsel said to me.
Which was?
Counsel had indicated to me that he had never seen a prosecution reject information, particularly paper-based information, that could have corroborated my verbal statements.
Thank you. My time has expired. Thank you.
Very good. Chair recognizes Ms. Bush for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. St. Louis and I are here today once again to focus on the real issues that affect our communities instead of this partisan circus. Let me start by saying that influence peddling is absolutely a very serious issue, full stop. But we all know the truth. Donald Trump is the quintessential influence peddler in chief. Despite this, for well over a year now, House Republicans have spent dozens of hours of precious committee time hearing testimony from nearly 20 witnesses on their baseless and increasingly embarrassing attempts to link President Biden to actions of his family members and implicate him by association. Even after all this time and effort, they haven't been able to muster up any credible links between the president and his son's business dealings. All they have proven is that they will do whatever it takes, including using their razor-thin majority and chairmanships to waste the people's time. Let's let today's hearing be the final nail in the coffin of this sham impeachment investigation. I urge my Republican colleagues to admit that their quest to impeach the president has completely collapsed. They have fallen short, and with each passing deal, they are losing votes and credibility, even within their own conference. It's time for them to move on. But that's not likely to happen because my Republican colleagues don't care about responsible governance or making people's lives better. They don't have an affirmative agenda. They would rather distract us all with these unfounded accusations against the president. So it's no coincidence that under Republican leadership, 2023 marked the most unproductive year in modern history for Congress. Aside from a failed impeachment investigation, an unprecedented 3-week stint without a speaker, and bringing our country to the brink of a catastrophic government shutdown multiple times, Republicans have done absolutely nothing to demonstrate why they deserve to control any chamber of Congress, let alone the White House, for which their cult leader, a twice impeached, 4 times indicted former president, is running to gain influence and control again. They're just grasping at straws, and it'd be comical if it wasn't leading to real harm and real hurt in our communities. The people of our country are the ones paying the price for their failure to actually govern. Instead of wasting all of our time, our hours and hours going down fake rabbit holes and amplifying baseless conspiracies, we could focus on actual policy. We could focus on substance. We could focus on saving and improving the lives of our constituents, not misusing precious time and resources of this committee. What I'd rather focus on is the people who don't have the money and resources to buy influence, the millions of people in our districts who have been harmed by the ongoing refusal of the federal government to take full responsibility for the Manhattan Project waste and who are still getting sick from exposure to toxic radioactive waste their own government created. it still lingers in communities all across the country, like in St. Louis, Missouri, where proper cleanup still remains undone. I am ranking member on the Subcommittee on Economic Growth, Energy Policy, and Regulatory Affairs. I have repeatedly requested a hearing on Manhattan Project waste and its countless victims. I'm still waiting. We could focus on ending the crisis of gun violence in this country. Every day, 327 people are shot in the United States. Every year, 42,654 people die from gun violence. More children die from guns than anything else in this country. Why are we not acting to protect them? How are we not treating this like the public health emergency that it is? We could focus on improving the lives of incarcerated individuals and weaning ourselves off of the carceral state. A currently incarcerated individual is your star witness today. I applaud your inclusivity. And surely, if folks convicted of crimes can testify before Congress, they should be allowed to vote. Why not enfranchise them? What about reproductive rights and freedom? We have a public health crisis in this country where millions of people of reproductive age can't get the care that they need. People in St. Louis are being forced to give birth against their will. Republicans need to use abortion care just like the rest of us. Why not meaningfully address this issue? We need to focus on ending the atrocities in Gaza and Israel. Since January, malnutrition in children under 5 has doubled, nearly doubled. Global experts warn famine is imminent for 1.1 million people, half the population due to catastrophic food insecurity. Why are we not acting to reinstate UNRWA, prevent famine and the spread of disease, and ending the continued slaughter of Palestinians? We do not have infinite time and resources. I will stop there. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time to Rep. Goldman.
Thank you very much, Ms.
10 seconds.
I want to just point to a photo here. Mr. Bobulinski, you have testified that Cassidy Hutchinson's account that you met Mark Meadows, then Chief of Staff for Donald Trump, at a Trump rally in Georgia behind Secret Service cars. You were wearing a mask.
Time's expired.
Sir, you went over a minute late with Mr. Perry. If we could have a little extra time. If you, Trump rally that you said
Time's
that she
expired.
was lying.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Sessions for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, could we have some basic equity?
If someone else wants to yield, she had 8 seconds to yield him, and he's got up here with a speech. He's already abused his privilege by making a motion that wasn't even a motion. Chair has ruled. The chair has ruled. The chair has ruled.
What are you afraid of, Mr. Chairman?
Recognize your.
What are you afraid of? Why don't you let me ask the question?
Chair recognizes the gentleman from. Oh, what purpose do you seek recognition, Mr. Biggs?
Unanimous consent to introduce the documents into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here they are. One is the invitation that was mentioned. Another is Hunter Biden's calendar. Another is the email mentioned confirming that Yelena Ballerina was going to invest $10 to $20 million with him. Another one is page 180 of the Galenis interview, page 56 of the transcribed interview of Hunter Biden, and also pages 41 and 42 of the Galenis interview.
Without objection, so ordered into the
Chairman,
record. Now, Chair, what purpose do you seek recognition, Mr.
I have a UC motion, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed.
I would like to enter into the record the portion of the Devin Archer transcript where he says that Yelena Ballerina never had any business dealings with Hunter Biden and that money went into their joint account was done by mistake.
By mistake. Okay. Without objection.
And Mr. Chairman, I have one UC request as well.
Proceed.
This is from Salon Magazine. It's embarrassing. Republicans worry they have zero accomplishments to run on in elections.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'd first like to enter into the record 302s that were done with Mr. Bobulinski, what's known as Exhibit 400A. Thank you very much. Mr. Bobulinski, thank you for being here. Mr. Parnas, thank you for being here. And those of you who are appearing extraneously on our screen. Mr. Bobulinski, tell me very quickly about the professionalism of the organization that you work for in terms of paychecks, getting paychecks, providing the IRS with documentation of people who were paid out of the organization.
I'm not sure I'm following your question.
Were you ever paid?
I was not.
So you were never paid by this organization?
I was not.
Did you ever receive any enumeration?
when we were in the process of trying to shut down Sinohawk Holdings LLC and Oneida Holdings LLC, I was compensated. It wasn't a compensation; it was a reimbursement of $50,000 of money I'd come out of pocket, traveling around, paying for hotels and stuff like that.
So, in other words, people did not get paid, or you didn't get paid that you were aware of. Were you aware that other people were being paid?
The Biden family was paid. Hunter and Jim Biden were clearly paid millions of dollars.
And how would you think that information would be transmitted about them receiving that payment and going to the IRS?
I'm not sure of those specifics. I'm just aware that they received those millions of dollars, obviously based on the brave testimony of Shapley and Ziegler that came public with a bunch of information, and then Senator Johnson and Senator Grassley's report. I never saw. The only bank account I ever saw is the one I set up at J.P. Morgan for Sinohawk Holdings and Oneida Holdings LLC. J.P. Morgan was well aware that the Biden family were owners in that business. They authorized it, approved it. And
what Social Security number was utilized to set up that account?
For Sinohawk and Oneida?
Yes.
We had to represent the owners of the underlying entity, so they were aware that Hudson West 4 owned 50% of Sinohawk Holdings, and they provided their information. On the Oneida side, we represented that each of us owned 20%, and I'd have to go back and look. I, as the CEO, probably provided my Social Security number. I'm not sure if we provided Social Security numbers for all 5 members.
And yet
excuse me, tax IDs for their LLC.
Or tax IDs. And yet you never received money except reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses that were related to the business.
Correct. And imagine that $50,000 I was paid was actually from the legal side of Sinohawk Holdings and the Chinese, while the Bidens had defrauded me and were receiving millions of dollars into their own pockets.
Were you aware that they were receiving millions of dollars at the time?
I was not.
Did you spend time with the Department of Justice on this matter?
I did. I had a voluntary interview with the FBI on October 23rd, I believe, 2020.
They approached you or you approached them?
My lawyers coordinated me. Which is obviously public knowledge, went to the second debate. I flew to D.C. with the intent of sitting in front of Senator Johnson, Senator Grassley, and their committee. And then my lawyers sought counsel, had discussions, and decided it was a better focus of my time to walk voluntarily into the FBI.
So where did you do that?
In Washington, D.C.
Main Justice, Main FBI, or the field office?
I believe it was the leading field office. They didn't want to do it in Main Justice for some their reasons. They decided. I would have gone wherever they asked me to go.
Did they tell you at the time that you were providing information that if you provided information that was not true and correct, that you could be held liable for that under criminal statute?
Yes, of course. I appreciate you asking that question. I was operated as if I misrepresented, misstated, lied, that I was committing criminal offenses, which I take very seriously based on the fact that I was willing to die for this country. And to just correct Ms. Crockett's statement earlier, I didn't accuse the FBI of lying. I stated in my transcribed interview that the FBI made mistakes in their 302. My lawyers never saw that document after my interview until it was made public to the world.
And then you attempted to correct that 302.
I did.
Is that the same 302 known as Exhibit 400A that I have entered in the record today?
It is.
Do you have any other dispute with that? And have you looked at it? And do you have any other dispute?
Well, there's numerous mistakes in it.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any reason to believe that all of these SAR reports that have come out of banks were all fraud?
And gentleman's time's expired, but he asked a question about the SARS report.
No, I mean, just the number of SARS reports should give every American pause. The average American in this country will never receive a single SAR in their entire life. So for a family or an individual to have over what I've publicly seen, 150 of them, is just extraordinary.
Okay. I want to thank all the witnesses that are here today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost. Or who? I thought you said Frost. Oh, Mr. Kassar. Okay, Frost was next. Kassar.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I could have my full 5 minutes, I'd appreciate
that. Reset the clock for 5 minutes for Mr. Kassar.
Thank you, Chairman. While we clearly disagree on the merits of this meritless investigation, I hope, Chairman, that we can at least come to an agreement on some basics. I believe that you and I can agree that presidents and White House officials should not be unduly influenced by foreign powers. So, Chairman, I'd be happy to yield to you briefly for a yes or no. Can we all agree that White House officials should not be bribed or unduly influenced by foreign actors?
It's your time. You can ask. We have witnesses here.
I would assume that you would agree.
We have witnesses. If you want to ask the witnesses question, or you want to waste time with me,
I'm not wasting time with you. I think that we've been disagreeing all day. I hope we can come to an agreement that White House officials should not be bribed or unduly influenced by foreign powers. I think you and I agree on this point. I see you nodding your head. I assume that that is a yes. I'm glad that we can work as an oversight committee on investigations, do the work we need to do, and make sure that no one in the White House has betrayed the public trust. We've spent countless hours talking about Hunter Biden, investigating every single person it seems like he's ever shaken hands with. We've not found a shred of evidence that connects it to the President of the United States or anyone with any say over U.S. policy. But someone who has worked in the White House did accept money from a foreign power. Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, received a staggering $2 billion from Saudi Arabia for his brand new private equity firm. And while Hunter Biden never had any say over U.S. policy, Mr. Kushner got this $2 billion 6 months after working in the White House as a senior advisor on Middle East policy. Mr. Kushner had no experience in private equity. In fact, he was so inexperienced that Saudi officials tried to block the transfer of the money until the Crown Prince overruled them. While working at the White House, Mr. Kushner pushed through a $110 billion weapons sale for Saudi Arabia. I'm finishing my point, and then I'm happy to talk about it. He then defended the deal in the wake of the Saudi government's murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And while this may all just be a coincidence, there's many questions. Like, was any of this money passed along to Trump? Was the Saudi money a thank you for a job well done in the White House? Was Jared given this money in exchange for anything else? Or did someone with no experience just have a lucky payday? These are questions we should have answers to.
Would the gentleman yield for a second?
That the Oversight Committee should look into.
But we can just add another question. What was the role that Jared Kushner played in covering up the assassination and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi, ordered by the Royal Conference?
Ranking member. And so I want to know, if Hunter Biden had accepted $2 billion from the Saudi government, I'm sure we'd be looking into that today. And Mr. Chairman, I believe we can agree that there should not be undue influence in the White House. And I believe we should be able to agree that we should look into these questions about Mr. Kushner. And in fact, Mr. Chairman, you were on CNN and said, quote, I've been very vocal that I think what Kushner did crossed the line of ethics. And then in our deposition of Hunter Biden the other day, when we were discussing Mr. Kushner, you said, Mr. Chairman, and I quote from the deposition, when we deal with influence peddling, we'll ask about Jared Kushner. Well, today's hearing is titled Influence Peddling. So we are here. So, Mr. Comer, I would love to hear from you. Can we fulfill our responsibility as an oversight committee and determine if Saudi Arabia bribed or unduly influenced Jared Kushner or other White House officials? Is that something we'd be willing to look into?
We've already had a conversation with Ms. Porter. I'm going to answer one time. Ms. Porter and I have pledged to work on influence peddling legislation. We'll take up all the people who have been accused of influence peddling. We'll try to determine whether Jared Kushner has a real business. We haven't been able to find a real business that the Bidens have had yet. Now, just still your time, Mr.
So could we expect to subpoena Mr. Kushner's correspondence with the Saudi government or his firm's financial records or financial transactions between Mr. Kushner and his father-in-law? Is that something that we would consider doing as part of that hearing you just discussed?
What was the question?
If we are serious about looking into foreign money, I saw recently a poster board here about $100,000 to a car dealership. Are we going to be serious about the $2 billion from the Saudi government to Mr. Kushner? My question is, would we be at least subpoenaing Jared's correspondence with the Saudi government and his firm's financial records. Can we commit to doing that?
I think it's important to see if there were real legitimate businesses.
And if there was influence
let me
peddling?
ask you a question. What business was Hunter Biden in?
We heard explicitly from Mr. Biden. We heard explicitly from Mr. Biden about his extensive business record and his experience on boards. We heard about that.
Time's
Mr.
expired.
Kushner, on the other hand.
Chair now recognizes
$2 billion.
Mr. Fallon for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair,
That's a shame.
before I start my questions, I'd like to enter into the record, submit to the record an article from the Kyiv Post, and then a second article from the Kyiv Post entitled "Prosecutor General Shokin Resigns," and it's updated. If I can enter this.
Without objection to ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sat in on the entire 7+ hour deposition that Hunter Biden gave to this committee, and one of the things that stood out to me was his assertions with a rather braggadocious flair of his business experience and his acumen and his impeccable qualifications. He claimed, with quite some vigor, I might add, that he was a brilliant, accomplished, and highly sought-after business commodity. He's very successful, and he had an unparalleled resume that he recited to us chapter and verse to prove it. That was at least the face his lawyers, this administration, and the House Democrats wanted him to wear. Of course, there's another possibility, one that this pesky little thing we call reality, that he was a spoiled, entitled East Coast patrician with a senator and then VP daddy who squandered his many life advantages and spiraled into a decadent behavioral pattern of narcissistic excess and criminal addiction. And to feed his very large carnal appetites, he acted as his family's bagman in an influence peddling and access selling scheme that netted the Biden tribe over $24 million in illicit foreign cash. Lots of money, little effort, in a get-rich-quick scheme. If he was such a skilled and gifted businessman as he claimed, his services would be sought after, in fact, even fought over. Mr. Boblinski, to your knowledge, how many Fortune 500 companies retained Hunter Biden on their board of directors?
Now or in his
Ever.
I can't confirm any.
Yeah, because there aren't any. Zero. How about how many energy companies retained Hunter Biden? I'm sorry, how many American energy companies retained Hunter Biden on their boards of directors?
Zero.
Zero, nada, correct. There was one energy company that retained him on their board of directors. Do you know what that name of that company was?
Yes, Burisma.
Burisma, correct. Where's Burisma located?
Ukraine.
Really? That's interesting because, and he was hired actually for no small sum, $1 million a year. Hunter Biden said in his deposition he could bring, and Mr. Chairman, I apologize for laughing, but he said his corporate governance to the table. He brought something far more valuable than his corporate governance. He brought his, in his fictitious business acumen, he brought his daddy with him. You see, Joe Biden just happened to have been given the country of Ukraine in his portfolio of responsibility to oversee by the Obama administration. So let's go over some facts, Mr. Chairman. Fact, Burisma and CEO Mykola Zlochevsky had been investigated for corruption. Fact, in September 2015, then U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Jeffrey Pyatt specifically mentioned Burisma as a corrupt entity. Fact, Burisma was paying the son of the Vice President of these United States $1 million a year to serve on their board. Fact, December 2015, Joe Biden visits Ukraine, demands Viktor Shokin, the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, who's investigating Burisma, his son's boss, be fired. Fact, February 2nd, 2016, Kyiv Post reports Viktor Shokin won a court order to seize assets of Burisma CEO Mykola Zlochevsky. 2 weeks later, fact, Shokin resigns. President Poroshenko called on him to resign. He resigned. He essentially was fired at the behest of Joe Biden. Fact, 2016, February, 2 weeks later, there's a little email sent from Vadim Pozarsky, COO of Burisma. He's an executive of Burisma, and to Hunter Biden, asking him, hey, Hunter, will you help us out? We want to get the embassy, the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine to say that we're a good company. Now, the ambassador just said they were corrupt a few months prior to that. And then, lo and behold, with the seal of the United States Embassy, they say that we have no negative information or feelings about Burisma. So what changed in those 6 months? It was magic. The power of the vice president's visit when he demands that his son's boss, the prosecutor who's investigating his son's boss, be fired. And he's going to withhold $1 billion worth of aid actually, it's I think loan guarantees, if Shokin's not fired, and then Shokin is fired, the embassy says that Burisma is a great company, our Democratic colleagues would have us believe, Mr. Chairman, that that was all magic, that there was no coincidence here. And with that, I yield the balance of my time to Mr. Jordan.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I was just going to point out that Jared Kushner was one of the key officials involved in the Abraham Accords. If we want to talk about influencing foreign, how about the President of the United States, what he said in his State of the Union regarding Israel, and how about what the Democrat leader of the Senate said last week, in that Israel should change its prime minister, for goodness sake. That to me is a concern. Jared Kushner was doing good work with the Abraham Accords. Of course, the Democrats don't want to admit that. I appreciate the gentleman for yielding.
Chair now recognizes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. I would move pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11 that the committee issue a subpoena to Jared Kushner to compel testimony related to the $2 billion collected from Saudi Arabia after his service within the White House.
Second.
There's a motion, and for what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
Move to table the motion.
There's a motion the motion to table is not debatable. As many as are in favor of tabling signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion to table is agreed to. The committee will now resume consideration of this hearing. Now, chair recognizes, is it Ms. Lee? Who's next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's fair to say at this point that Republicans on this committee are relying on Mr. Bobulinski as their star witness. The only fact witness they have brought in person before this committee. So I think we'd all expect that Mr. Bobulinski would have extensive inside knowledge about the involvement they allege that President Biden and in Hunter's business ventures. As Mr. Parnas can vouch for, previous impeachment inquiries relied on whistleblowers and witnesses with intimate details of what went on, firsthand accounts of high crimes and misdemeanors. You could point to exactly what the allegations were and understand what was going on. There were laid out chains of events pointing to a named crime, lying under oath, obstruction of justice, abuse of power, incitement of insurrection. Yet we're left floundering here with zero direction and zero real evidence while we watch this kangaroo court struggle to continue on. And today we have Mr. Bobulinski, whose biggest contribution is that he had, quote, multiple meetings with Joe Biden. But let's be clear. He spoke with Joe Biden a grand total of 2 times in the span of less than 24 hours in 2017, and each was short. One in public, in the bar of a hotel, and then for a few minutes backstage of the Milken Conference after Biden spoke about the efforts to fight cancer, which took the life of his son, Beau. I think we also need to clarify that while Mr. Bobulinski is all of a sudden today claiming that they talked business, but at no point did he mention this during his deposition under oath with this committee. At 2 different points when asked about what was said in these conversations, Mr. Bobulinski's account made clear that he had 0 substantive business discussions with Mr. Joe Biden. Mr. Bobulinski described those conversations twice during his transcribed interview, and both times he provided the same accounts. I'll read from the transcript of your interview, Mr. Bobulinski. You stated that you and Joe Biden discussed your, quote, family background in detail, as well as the Biden family's background and Joe Biden's, quote, appreciation for the military. Pages 48 through 52 and 268 to 271 of the transcript had these accounts. Based on your own account, you had 0 discussion of CEFC, the Chinese energy company. You had 0 discussion on shares of equity or capitalization of this failed business venture. Based on your own account, you simply exchanged pleasantries about your families and shared values, the kind of small talk any person would make if they had the opportunity to meet the former Vice President of the United States, and moved on. Yet today, when my Republican colleagues are so desperate for actual evidence, magically that story changes. And that's really at the heart of everything we're discussing today. Mr. Bobulinski has also been pushing his texts as records as proof, yet the Wall Street Journal found that none of it showed any role for Joe Biden and Sinahawk Holdings, and even Fox News reported that there was 0 evidence of business dealings involving Joe Biden. Mr. Bobulinski would have us believe that everyone is a liar except him, and except for when he's under oath, that everyone misremembers except for him and except for when he's under oath. The FBI, the Wall Street Journal, his business associations, all liars. Republicans in this committee and the culture warriors of Fox News keep saying, look at the documents, look at the documents. So let's look. This purported investigation has received over 100,000 pages of documents, and not a single one shows any evidence of any wrongdoing, much less an impeachable offense. And taking a step back, even if Joe Biden had discussed his son's business ventures with Tony Bobolinsky in 2017, and this is rhetorical, so what? What would be the high crime of misdemeanor? What would be the impeachable offense? We're talking about what private citizen Hunter Biden was doing with his time, at the time, private citizen dad. This impeachment inquiry is not about facts or evidence. It's not even about impeachable offenses. It's about keeping the American people distracted while we do nothing on reducing gun violence, nothing on lowering healthcare costs, nothing on reforming our criminal legal system. This has been the least productive Congress in decades. We're just now, in March, finally funding the government for this year. That's shameful. This unserious hearing is a waste of our time and our resources. I yield with that, and I yield the remainder of my time to Representative Crockett.
Yes, I just want to make sure that I point out, and this is not a question, just in case you wanted to know, that on page 174 of your transcribed interview, line 9, it says, "This is an absolute lie," in reference to talking about the FBI. What you stated—
I did not call the
what was
FBI
stated
agents
right
liars.
before that was,
I
first
said
of all,
they misstated
I said that I'm
or
speaking,
made
and I did not
mistakes.
ask you a question. First of all, it doesn't say Tony Bobolinsky told the FBI. This is a summary of 2 agents that took notes through my interview, and their summary apparently that they presented says Bobolinsky first met in person with members of the Biden family at a 2017 meeting in Miami, Florida. This is an absolute lie. That is what it says. The final thing that I'm going to say is about this. What we have from Kim Buck, a Republican, I don't think that the impeachment of Biden is appropriate, and so House Speaker Mike Johnson's ability to talk me into staying here is going to be about as successful as his ability about talking me into an unconstitutional impeachment.
I'll let her have 30 seconds over. Chair now recognizes Mr. Burchett from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On July 30th, 2017, Hunter Biden wrote to his Chinese business associate, Raymond Zhao, "I'm sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled." Mr. Bobolinsky, why did Raymond Zhao work for the, who did Raymond Zhao work for when this message was sent?
Raymond Zhao worked for Director Zhang at CEFC.
Is CEFC connected to the Chinese Communist Party?
It is.
Is CEFC a corrupt organization?
It was.
From your perspective, what had occurred with CEFC from the end of May to this July 30th text message?
Well, it's tough to go through all these details in 20-second clips, but at the end of July, it's important to note Jim Biden was broke. Hunter Biden was broke. Published by the brave whistleblower Shapley and Ziegler. And Hunter made the conscious decision to basically defraud the partners of Sinohawk Holdings and Oneida because he needed money immediately. They've published pages of text messages where he's trying to get money into his bank account. And so that night, for whatever reason, on the 30th, when he asked why hasn't the commitment been fulfilled, the commitment he's talking about is actually the $10 million funding into Sinohawk Holdings, LLC. Really key point. But the next day, he decides that he's going to defraud Sinohawk Holdings and Oneida, create a new entity called Hudson West 3. Well, actually, change Hudson West 3. It had already previously been created by the Chinese, and make himself a 50% owner in that entity. So when the Chinese did send money, he would have instant access to it. Really important, backed up with tens of pages of communications. He wanted to get access to the money the second it came in. And in Sinohawk Holdings and Oneida Holdings, he did not have that power. I just want to address one thing real quick. Hunter Biden represents, he's a governance expert. That's why Burisma put him on the board. Well, he obviously can't do basic math. The board of Oneida Holdings had 7 votes. Each one of them, Hunter, Jim Biden, James Gillian, and Rob Walker, had a single vote. I had 3 votes. I have a master's degree in electrical and nuclear engineering. I think I can do math. I had 3, they had 4. They controlled Oneida Holdings. So Hunter Biden's representations that I was trying to take the business from them or I didn't know is all a sham and a misrepresentation. He wanted money in his account instantly, and that's why he shook down the Chinese, and they were willing to send him that $5 million because they viewed it as a bribe to the Biden family. They say it in their own communications.
Are you aware or not that they pay taxes on any of that?
I can only go from public testimony. I was not involved in their taxes.
Okay. On July 31st, the next day, Hunter says he hopes Kevin should know that the plan to speak is highly confidential. And Raymond Zhao responded, CEFC is willing to cooperate with the family and the priorities to solve the problems mentioned last night. What family was Raymond Zhao talking about? Was it
the family was a Biden family, and more importantly in that text is what is he talking about is the confidential manner. The confidential matter he's talking about were 4 sealed indictments in the SDNY where they were about to indict executives of CEFC that we now know. I didn't know that in July of 2017, but the SDNY knew. Charles McGonigal, who's now apparently going to serve 78 months in prison, ran counterintelligence for the FBI in New York City, where Chairman Yee was dropping $50 million of cash for penthouses in Manhattan. So who you should be asking all these questions are the Department of Justice, the SDNY, the FBI, because they have troves of evidence that back up what was going on in July 2017 and in August 2017. So I apologize, Congressman, to be so passionate and to take your time, but this is what I need you guys, or the focus has to be of your oversight committee. This involved the Chinese Communist Party. They were doing a transaction with Rosneft, which was a Russian-sanctioned U.S.-sanctioned company at the time, and the Biden family was right front and center in the middle of it.
Thank you. I'll switch gears for a second. I wish Hunter Biden were here because I'd like to ask him about his taxes. I want to know if he paid his fair share, just like his dad's asked Americans to do. I want to know if he's current on his taxes, and if he isn't, I'd like to ask him when he plans to pay up. Mr. Bobulinski, you're a businessman. Did you pay your taxes?
I did.
Mr. Bobulinski actually pays his taxes, unlike the president's son, and yet Democrats on this committee act like Hunter is the believable one out of you two. Joe Biden has no right to lecture the American people about their taxes until he gets his own house in order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Chair now recognizes Mr. Moskowitz for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. By the way, how are you doing? Good? Okay. Mr. Bobulinski, over here, how are you doing? Good. So I just have a question. We've been at this for 15 months now in oversight. I know this is your first time here, but do you think Chairman Comer has proven that Joe Biden has committed a high crime and misdemeanor?
I believe with all the evidence he's gathered, yes, he's proven that Joe Biden has committed high crimes and misdemeanors.
Okay, and so I assume you believe Joe Biden should be impeached.
Well, that's up to you guys.
But do you believe he should be impeached? It's yes or no.
Do I personally believe
you.
Under constitutional...
No. You personally, do you believe he should be impeached?
I do.
Okay, and you believe that because you believe Chairman Comer has proven that he committed a high crime and misdemeanor?
No, because I know that he committed high crimes and misdemeanors.
Okay.
I was involved and saw them happen.
Right, but obviously, with all the evidence, you must believe that all of these hearings for 15 months that the chairman has proven that, right?
You re-ask the question?
Sure. I'll sum it up. I assume you believe he should be impeached, but my point is that the chairman has not yet moved for that. And so, look, Chairman, we got like 3.5 minutes here. I mean, let's just do the impeachment. I mean, why continue to waste millions of dollars of the taxpayers' money if we're going to impeach because you believe you've shown he's committed a high crime and misdemeanor? What are you waiting on? Let's just do it. I mean, by the way, we got Chairman Jordan here also, the double chairman. Why aren't you guys calling for the vote in your committee? When is it going to happen? When can we tell the American people you're going to stop wasting their money and just call for the vote on impeachment?
Gentlemen, you?
Sure.
We don't do snap impeachments like you guys. We actually do the facts. We do oversight according to the Constitution.
You're never going to call for it. You're never going to call for it. I mean,
now you can predict. You can predict the future. How do you know?
You guys only have 6 more months probably in power, right, until the election. So, are you going to do it in 2 months? Are you going to do it in 3 months? Like, tell the American people.
Does the Constitution put a time limit on oversight? I don't think I didn't read that in the Constitution.
If you believe you can't call for the impeachment now, then what you're admitting is you haven't yet proven that he's committed a high crime and misdemeanor. You haven't proven it yet. Otherwise, you would call for it, I assume.
We're doing our work.
Okay, so they haven't proven it, right? They haven't proven he committed a high crime and misdemeanor. Otherwise, we would call for impeachment. So I just, look, you know, the chairman knows me well. I mean, I'm just here to help him, right? And so I just think we should do it today. Let's just call for it. I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman. I want to help you out. You can second it, right? Like, make the motion to impeach President Biden. Go ahead. It's your turn. You second it. No, nothing. Okay, we got nothing. So I want to, with my last couple minutes, show the American people that they're never going to impeach Joe Biden. It's never going to happen because they don't have the evidence. Okay, this is a show. It's all fake. They just want to do these hearings. It's not leading to impeachment. They're lying to their base on Newsmax and Fox, leading these people to believe that they're going to eventually impeach the president. It's not going to happen at all, ever. Period. They don't even have the votes, even if they had it in committee. They don't have the votes on the floor. They know that. They got members resigning rather than taking a vote on the fake faux impeachment. Just ask Ken Buck, who said the speaker ain't going to get me to take an unconstitutional impeachment vote. I mean, boy. I mean, so look, I mean, if these hearings were a success, right? If what we've been doing for the last 15 months had convinced the American people that Joe Biden committed a high crime and misdemeanor, you can be damn sure they would have called the vote by now, right? But they want it to go on. They either want it to go on because they don't have the evidence.
Are you asking me a question?
No, I'm just looking at you.
Oh, okay.
But if you want to talk to me, we can talk.
Well, no, I think you haven't read recent data that shows the American people are well aware of the Biden's corruption.
Perfect. So then ask the chairman why he hasn't called for impeachment, Tony. He's right here. Ask Comer. Hey, Comer, how come you haven't called for impeachment? I'll do it. Watch. Hi, I'm Tony. Hey, chairman, how come you haven't called for impeachment? When are we going to have the hearing? When is the vote going to happen? I mean, you believe it. He believes it. He says it every day on TV. I just don't know when we're going to have the vote. I mean, let's just go.
Are you asking me to hold the vote?
We can save. No, I just like looking at you. Yeah. We can save the taxpayers millions of dollars. So, I mean, look, I used all of my time to show that this vote is never going to happen because they have no evidence on Joe Biden. I yield back.
Gentlemen's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Burleson from Missouri for 5 minutes. Switch backs. Restart the clock.
Look at the mayor first. Before you say.
Who served in prison for felon? Not me.
You have everything you had. Keep talking. You'll join your friends.
We'll get you a mic. Do you want to go to that one?
Okay. Apologies.
All right, we good?
Now we are.
All right. I want to start with Galanis. Mr. Galanis, you've heard the expression, say it, forget it, write it, regret it. Have you heard that expression? Mr. Galanis?
Yes, I'm here. Congressman?
Have you heard the expression, say it, forget it, write it, regret it?
Yes, I have. It was a practice that we used in our business.
In whose business?
Business with Hunter Biden and Devin Archer.
Okay, so it's their expression.
Referred to as Burnham.
Let me ask you a question. Who is Haris Youssef?
Haris Youssef is a Ukrainian investor originally from Syria, a longtime colleague of Dmitry Firtash.
So he's a colleague of Dmitry Firtash. He was mentioned earlier this hearing. Who is Dmitry Firtash?
He's a Ukrainian oligarch very close to the Kremlin that made his fortune primarily in trading gas from Gazprom, the Russian state oil and gas company.
So connected to Vladimir Putin, correct?
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, in fact, during Hunter Biden's deposition with the committee, he justified his role. I think you'll find this comical. He justified his role on the Ukrainian Burisma board by saying, in essence, that it was his patriotic duty, that he was serving, freedom, because there were, quote this is his quote, there were 2 gas companies inside Ukraine at the time. One of them was a state-owned, which was highly corrupt and connected to people like Firtash, which was directly going into Vladimir Putin's pocket. The only independent company was Burisma, end quote. Now, my question to you, based on this, he's disparaging Mr. Firtash, and yet, are you aware that that Mr. Biden, Hunter Biden, did business with Mr. Firtash?
Yes, I am.
So let me ask you, what kind of financial transactions occurred between them?
What Haris Youssef described to me, and then I was also described to me by others, including Devin and Hunter, was a $5 million payment that was made by Dmitry Firtash, is handled by Haris Youssef through Hunter Biden's law firm. That was deemed a success fee in order to quash an outstanding indictment for which in the United States.
So a Putin-connected Russian oligarch wired over $5 million to Hunter Biden's law firm for what activity? What was Hunter supposed to do for that $5.5 million?
He was supposed to perform in quashing the indictment that resulted in an arrest warrant for Dmitry Firtash, who is
being charged in the United States. Yeah, being charged in the United States in Indiana. So he's supposed to quash that, use his political influence to do so. So my question is, of that money, the $5 million, $3 million made its way to a company that you set up with Devin Archer called Inbloom. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And finally, from that $3 million, there was a transfer that was made, and I've got a copy of that, the bank record to prove that, of $275,000. Do you recall that transfer?
I do.
And it went to which account?
Rosemont Seneca Bohai.
Rosemont Seneca Bohai. So despite what Hunter said during his deposition, based on your knowledge, was Hunter Biden connected to Rosemont Seneca Bohai? Was he part owner?
Very much so, and he said as much and had direction and control, and was a beneficiary of the account. So there are emails that document he directed monies to be dispersed from that account, including to himself.
Now, it sounds like, despite what he's saying, what he told the committee, that this guy was a bad hombre, basically, that this Firtash guy connected to Putin, and therefore he had to get on Ukraine. And yet he had no problem doing business for this corrupt Russian oligarch connected to Putin. In fact, had no problem taking $5 million and a direct transfer of $275,000. Would you agree?
I agree with that, yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Bobulinski, and I've got just a little bit of time left. Sorry, very little time. So I want to ask you, for God's sake, Hunter Biden is doing all of these transactions, doing all of this business, and yet his father is vice president. And we're to believe that his father isn't aware of all of these. He's been on the phone calls, he's been in the meeting, and yet he's not aware that his son is doing business with people connected to Vladimir Putin? Are we to believe that?
It's an absurd expectation.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Very good. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The claims made against the President of the United States have been so completely proven to be lies that even House Republicans now are admitting that it's time to close this case. Mr. Parnas, I have a few questions for you in limited time, so I really want to try to get through these. And I just want everybody to know, especially people watching at home, that you're like one of the most credible witnesses that we've had throughout this entire impeachment inquiry. First off, I just want folks to know, for people who aren't familiar, can you tell me who you were working for between 2018